നമ്മൾ ഇന്ന് ഇവിടെ ഒത്തുചേർന്നിരിക്കുന്നത്. കേരള പ്രദേശ് ഗാന്ധി ദർശൻ സമിതിയുടെ വിദ്യാഭ്യാസ കൾച്ചറൽ ഓർഗനൈസേഷനും സാഹിതി ഇന്റർനാഷണലും കൂടി സംയുക്തമായിട്ടാണ് ഇന്ന് ഈ വെബിനാർ ഇവിടെ ഓർഗനൈസ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. ഇന്ത്യൻ ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കൽ കൗൺസിൽ ഒഴിവാക്കപ്പെടുന്ന ലിസ്റ്റിൽ ഉൾപ്പെടുത്തിയിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട സ്വാതന്ത്ര്യ സമരമായി നിസ്സഹകരണ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തെ ഉൾപ്പെടുത്താൻ ശ്രമിക്കുമ്പോൾ നിസ്സഹകരണ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തിന്റെ പ്രസക്തി എത്തിക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി നിസ്സഹകരണ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തിന്റെ പ്രസക്തി ജനങ്ങളിൽ എത്തിക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി നടത്തുന്ന ക്യാമ്പയിന്റെ ഭാഗമായി നമ്മൾ ഇന്നിവിടെ ഒത്തുചേർന്നിരിക്കുന്നത്. ഈ മീറ്റിംഗിന്റെ വിശിഷ്ടാതിഥി ബഹുമാനപ്പെട്ട തുഷാർ ഗാന്ധിജി അവറുകളാണ്. ഈ ചടങ്ങിൽ സ്വാഗതം ആശംസിക്കുന്നതിനായി സാഹിതി ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ കോർഡിനേറ്ററും ഗാന്ധി ദർശൻ സമിതിയുടെ സമാരാധ്യ നേതാവുമായ പ്രിയപ്പെട്ട നസീർ നെച്ചോട്ട് സാറിനെ ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു. യോഗത്തിന്റെ അധ്യക്ഷത വഹിക്കുന്നതിനായി മുൻ മന്ത്രിയും പ്രമുഖ ഗാന്ധിയനുമായ സാഹിതിയുടെ ചെയർമാൻ കൂടിയായ ശ്രീ VC കബീർ മാസ്റ്ററെയും ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു. വെൽക്കം നസീർ നെച്ചോട്ട് സാർ.
Thank you, Mr. Bini Sahithy, Secretary General of Sahithy International. Today's attraction is the presence of respected guest, Mr. Tushar Gandhi. I respectfully welcome Mr. Tushar Gandhi, great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi ji, sir.
Thank you.
Hearty welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sahithy is a creative group of teachers in Kerala, inspiring students, teachers, and all kind of peoples by conducting different seminars, online webinars during COVID. വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളെയും അധ്യാപകരെയും രക്ഷിതാക്കളെയും പ്രവാസികളെയും പ്രചോദിപ്പിക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി നിരന്തരം വിവിധ തരത്തിലുള്ള പരിപാടികൾ നടത്തിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സാഹിതി ഇന്ന് ഗാന്ധിജിയുടെ അനുസ്മരണവുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട മൂന്നാമത് പരിപാടിയാണ് ഇന്ന് നടത്തിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നതെന്ന് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാം. കേരളത്തിലെ ഗാന്ധിജിയുടെ സന്ദർശനത്തിന്റെ 100ാം വാർഷികത്തോടനുബന്ധിച്ച് അറിയപ്പെടുന്ന ഗാന്ധിയൻ ഡോക്ടർ SN സുബ്ബാറാവുവിനെ പങ്കെടുപ്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ ഒരു വെബിനാർ സംഘടിപ്പിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഗാന്ധി ജയന്തിയോടനുബന്ധിച്ച് ഗാന്ധി ദർശൻ സമിതിയുമായി ചേർന്ന് മറ്റൊരു വെബിനാർ നമ്മൾ സംഘടിപ്പിച്ചു. ഇത് മൂന്നാമത് വെബിനാറാണ്. നിസ്സഹകരണ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തിന്റെ സമകാലിക പ്രസക്തിയുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് ഇന്ന് നമ്മോട് സംവദിക്കാൻ എത്തിയിരിക്കുന്നത് പ്രമുഖ ഗാന്ധിയനും ഗാന്ധിജി ട്രസ്റ്റിന്റെ ചെയർമാനും നിരവധി രംഗങ്ങളിലൂടെ ഭാരതീയരുടെ മനസ്സിൽ സ്ഥാനം നേടുകയും ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള CISRI ISP പദ്ധതിയുടെ ഗുഡ്വിൽ അംബാസഡർ കൂടിയായി പ്രവർത്തിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള ബഹുമാന്യനായ തുഷാർ ഗാന്ധി അവറുകളാണ്. അദ്ദേഹത്തെ നമ്മുടെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിലേക്ക് ആദരപൂർവ്വം സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യും. നമ്മുടെ ഇന്നത്തെ വെബിനാറിന്റെ അധ്യക്ഷത വഹിക്കുന്നത് സാഹിതിയുടെ ചെയർമാൻ, മുൻ മന്ത്രി, സാമൂഹിക സാംസ്കാരിക രംഗങ്ങളിലെ നിറസാന്നിധ്യവും ഗാന്ധിജിയുമായി കേരളത്തിൽ നടക്കുന്ന മുഴുവൻ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളുടെയും ശ്രദ്ധാ കേന്ദ്രവുമായ VC കബീർ മാസ്റ്റർ അവറുകളാണ്. ആദരപൂർവ്വം VC കബീർ മാസ്റ്റർ അവറുകളെ നമ്മുടെ വെബിനാറിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു.
നമസ്കാരം.
അതുപോലെ തന്നെ APCCയുടെ ആദരണീയനായ പഴകുളം മധു അവറുകൾ നമ്മുടെ വെബിനാറിൽ സംബന്ധിക്കുന്നു. അദ്ദേഹത്തെ ആദരപൂർവ്വം സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. നാഷണൽ യൂത്ത് പ്രോജക്റ്റിന്റെ സെക്രട്ടറി കാരയിൽ സുകുമാരൻ അവറുകൾ. ഈ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ തുഷാർ ഗാന്ധി എത്തിക്കുന്നതിൽ നിസ്തുലമായ പങ്കാണ് അദ്ദേഹം നിർവഹിച്ചത്. കാരയിൽ സുകുമാരൻ അവറുകളെ സന്തോഷത്തോടെ ആഹ്ലാദത്തോടെ നമ്മുടെ വെബിനാറിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ കമ്പറ നാരായണൻ സർ, ഹരി ഗോവിന്ദൻ സർ, ഓണിൽ രവീന്ദ്രൻ സർ, പ്രമുഖ ബാലസാഹിത്യകാരൻ KK പല്ലശന, പരശുവക്കൽ രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ, ബിന്നി സാഹിതി, ഇവരെ എല്ലാം വളരെ ആദരപൂർവ്വം നമ്മുടെ വെബിനാറിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. നമ്മുടെ വെബിനാറിന്റെ അധ്യക്ഷ പദവി അലങ്കരിക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി ആദരണീയനായ VC കബീർ മാസ്റ്ററോട് അഭ്യർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ജയ്.
പ്രിയപ്പെട്ട മിനി മാത്യു ടീച്ചറിനെയും കൂടി സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. സ്വാഗത പ്രസംഗൻ പേര് വിട്ടുപോയതാണ്. കബീർ മാസ്റ്റർ തുടരാം.
I am very happy to welcome dear Tushar Gandhi to this web seminar. 15 years ago, I went to Bombay to invite Tusharji to Kerala for a program. But at that time, he was not well. He was under treatment. This opportunity, I am very happy to welcome him to this web seminar. എനിക്ക് അത്യധികം സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. ഇതുപോലെ ഒരു പരിപാടിക്ക് വേണ്ടി 15 കൊല്ലം മുമ്പേ ഞാൻ അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ വീട്ടിൽ പോയിരുന്നു. വലിയൊരു പാലസ്, വലിയ ബംഗ്ലാവൊക്കെയാണ് പ്രതീക്ഷിച്ചത്. ഒരു കൊച്ചു ഫ്ലാറ്റിലായിരുന്നു അദ്ദേഹം താമസിച്ചിരുന്നത്. ബോംബെയിൽ തിരക്കുള്ള സ്ഥലമായിരുന്നു. അപ്പം ഞാൻ വലിയൊരു വീടൊക്കെ പ്രതീക്ഷിച്ചിരുന്നു. അതുണ്ടായില്ല. ഞങ്ങൾ ഏതാണ്ട് 3/4 മണിക്കൂർ നേരം, അന്ന് വിഷു ദിവസമായിരുന്നു, കേരളത്തിൽ അദ്ദേഹത്തോടൊപ്പം എനിക്ക് ചെലവഴിക്കാൻ സാധിച്ചു. ഞാനത് സന്തോഷത്തോടുകൂടി ഇപ്പോൾ ഓർമ്മിക്കുന്നു. ഐ വെൽക്കം ഹിം വൺസ് അഗെയിൻ. ഒരുപാട് നല്ല കാര്യങ്ങൾ, ക്ഷേമപ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ, സാഹിത്യകാരന്മാരെ പ്രോത്സാഹിപ്പിക്കുന്ന പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ നടത്തിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. മഹാത്മാഗാന്ധിയെക്കുറിച്ചാണ് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ, അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ നിസ്സഹകരണ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തെക്കുറിച്ചാണ് ഇന്ന് ചർച്ച ചെയ്യുന്നത്. നോൺ കോഓപ്പറേഷൻ ഗാന്ധിജി അത് മാത്രമല്ല, അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ ഞാനിപ്പോൾ ശ്രീബുദ്ധൻ മഹാദേവൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ഒരു പുസ്തകം ഈ കോവിഡ് കാലത്ത് എഴുതി കഴിഞ്ഞു. ശ്രീബുദ്ധൻ മഹാദേവൻ. ആ പുസ്തകം എഴുതിയത് ഒരു ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് സാഹിത്യകാരനായ എഡ്വിൻ അർണോൾഡിൻ്റെ പുസ്തകമാണ്. ലൈറ്റ് ഓഫ് ഏഷ്യ. എഡ്വിൻ അർണോൾഡിൻ്റെ ലൈറ്റ് ഓഫ് ഏഷ്യ എന്ന പുസ്തകം മഹാത്മാഗാന്ധി വായിക്കുകയും അദ്ദേഹം അതിൽ നിന്ന് ഒരുപാട് സന്ദേശങ്ങൾ, ശ്രീബുദ്ധനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള സന്ദേശങ്ങൾ, ശ്രീബുദ്ധന്റെ സന്ദേശങ്ങൾ മഹാത്മാഗാന്ധി അഡോപ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തു. അഹിംസാവാദിയും സത്യവിശ്വാസിയും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ നിസ്സഹകരണം എന്നുള്ളത് ആയുധമെടുക്കാതെ ശത്രുവിനെ കീഴ്പ്പെടുത്തുന്ന ഒരു അധ്യായം എല്ലാം തന്നെ ഈ എഡ്വിൻ അർണോൾഡിന്റെ ലൈറ്റ് ഓഫ് ഏഷ്യ എന്ന പുസ്തകത്തിൽ നിന്നാണ് മഹാത്മാഗാന്ധി വായിച്ചത്. ഞാൻ ആ പുസ്തകം 2-3 പുസ്തകങ്ങൾ അത് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ വായിക്കേണ്ടായി. പക്ഷേ എന്നെ അത്ഭുതപ്പെടുത്തിയത് അത് എല്ലാം കവിതകളായിരുന്നു. അർണോൾഡ് എഴുതിയിട്ടുള്ള ആ കവിതകളിൽ നിന്നാണ് ഗാന്ധിജി ശ്രീബുദ്ധനെ കുറിച്ച് പഠിച്ചത്. അതിൽ നിന്നായിരിക്കാം ഒരുപക്ഷെ ഗാന്ധിജി ഈ ശത്രുക്കളെ കീഴ്പ്പെടുത്താൻ അഹിംസാ സിദ്ധാന്തവും നിസ്സഹകരണ പ്രസ്ഥാനവും ആരംഭിച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത് എന്ന് ഞാൻ വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നു. ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ പുസ്തകത്തിൽ അത് കുറിച്ചിട്ടുമുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ സാന്നിധ്യത്തിൽ തന്നെ നമുക്കിങ്ങനെ ഒരു ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റിയത് സാഹിതി അതിന് മുൻകൈ എടുത്തതിലും വളരെയധികം സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. ഒട്ടേറെ സുഹൃത്തുക്കൾ നമ്മളുമായി സഹകരിക്കുന്ന, നമ്മുടെ ഗൈഡുകളായ, നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടി പ്രവർത്തിക്കുകയും നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടി സംസാരിക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരുപാട് സുഹൃത്തുക്കൾ ഇവിടെ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. അവരുടെ എല്ലാവരുടെയും പേര് സമയക്കുറവ് കാരണം ഞാൻ പറയുന്നില്ല. ഇദ്ദേഹത്തെ കിട്ടിയതിലും അദ്ദേഹത്തെ നമുക്ക് ഒരു പ്രാവശ്യം ഗാന്ധി ദർശൻ സമിതിയുടെ പരിപാടിക്ക് വേണ്ടി അദ്ദേഹത്തെ ഞാനിപ്പോൾ തന്നെ ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. ഐ എം ഇൻവൈറ്റ് യു ടു വിസിറ്റ് കേരള ആൻഡ് stay here for some days and take rest with us and enjoy the nature. Mahatma Gandhi enjoyed the nature of Kerala. 5 times.
I like Kerala.
Welcome. Happy. 5 times Gandhiji visited Kerala. 3 times in my district, Shabari Ashramam and Palakkad, 3 times. 47 days, Mahatmaji traveled in Kerala. And each and every section, there was many receptions and programs. Gandhiji conducted that with the visiting. Gandhi Darshan Samiti is prepared a plan to visit 147 places wherever Mahatma Gandhi visited and the reception is received. We want to arrange some programs and 147 places in Kerala. COVID is influenced us, disturbed us, so we postponed that program to December. At that time, I heartily invite you, dear Junior Gandhi, to come to Kerala and enjoy our reception, just like Gandhiji's reception. Once again, I invite you. Once again, I am congratulating you. I wish you healthy, long life from Kerala. Thank you.
Thank you.
അടുത്ത ആളെ വിളിച്ചോളൂ. അടുത്ത ആളെ വിളിച്ചോളൂ.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, DC Kabir Master. തുഷാർ ഗാന്ധി അവരുടെ പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി നാഷണൽ യൂത്ത് പ്രോജക്റ്റിന്റെ ജനറൽ സെക്രട്ടറി കാരയിൽ സുകുമാരൻ സാറിനെ ആദരപൂർവ്വം ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു. I invite Mr. Karil Sukumaran to introduce our honorable guest, Tushar Gandhiji. Can you hear me, Karil Sukumaranji?
കുമാർജി,
ഗണിതത്തിൽ വളരെയേറെ താല്പര്യമുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. കാരണം എന്താ വെച്ചാൽ അവിടെ പഠിപ്പിച്ചിരുന്നവർക്ക് അധ്യാപകരാണ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ
ബിനി സാറേ, സുകുമാരൻ സാർ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ടോ?
7ാം ക്ലാസ്സിലെത്തിയപ്പോൾ അധ്യാപകനോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അധ്യാപികയോ മാറി പുതിയ ടീച്ചർ വന്നപ്പോൾ എന്റെ ഗണിതത്തിലുള്ള എല്ലാ
അദ്ദേഹത്തെ
കൂടെ അവസാനിച്ചു. കാരണം അവിടെയും
അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ അസാന്നിധ്യത്തിൽ
അധ്യാപികയാണ് കാരണം. അപ്പോ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു കിടന്നത് ഒരേ ടോപ്പിക്ക്
directly
അധ്യാപകർ കൊടുത്താൽ അത് പ്രസന്റ്
let us listen the great speech of great leader Tushar Gandhiji. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers and the honorable chairman and office bearers of SAHITHY. I am very grateful to you for this.
What happened?
For this invitation to speak. I have one request. If everybody else can please mute
Pardon,
their
sir.
mics.
Pardon, sir.
It's disturbing me.
Pardon, sir. He has arrived. Dr. Karil Sukumaranji arrived. Just a minute.
Okay.
Sorry,
fine,
sir.
Fine. Sure.
Karil Sukumaran,
Sure.
sir.
No problem.
സുകുമാരൻ സർ മ്യൂട്ട് ആണ്, അൺമ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യണം സർ. കാരിൽ സർ മ്യൂട്ട് ആണ്.
സോഷ്യൽ സയൻസ് പഠിപ്പിച്ചിരുന്നത് നമുക്കറിയാം. അധ്യാപകർ വെറും ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ബുക്ക്
ഒരുപാട് ശബ്ദം വരുന്നുണ്ട്. അതാ എവിടുന്നാണ്? ടിവിയോ? ആരോ പാർട്ടിസിപ്പൻസ് ടി വി ഓഫ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറയും. അതാണ് ഈ the President, Sri Kabir Master, Senior Gandhian and former Minister, my organizers, my friends. There are so many friends in this as audience in this program and guests. I like to greet them all and respected Gandhi, Tushar Gandhiji, and my dear friends. The non-cooperative movement, the subject they selected, the welcome speak. He was pointing out that about that why they selected this subject. The non-cooperative movement aimed to challenge the colonial economic and power structure, and British authorities would be forced to take notice of the demands of the independence movement. Gandhiji's call was for a nationwide peaceful and non-violent protest against the British rule. It was a significant phase of Indian independence movement. It aimed to resist British rule in India through non-violent movement, means Satyagraha. We can see the non-cooperative movement paved the way. We can say that it paved the way for the freedom struggle towards a non-violent movement. I'm very happy. I am not going to take much time. I'm very happy to be here and excited to welcome our wonderful chief guest, respected Tushar Gandhiji, the great social reformer, the proud Indian voice in the global arena, Gandhian activist, journalist, writer, filmmaker, educationalist, a vibrant speaker, and what not. The great grandson of our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. With due respect, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And extremely extending my gratitude for accepting the invitation to inaugurate this noble function in between your busy schedule. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all other friends who are participating in the program. I request you to inaugurate the program, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for your very warm and generous welcome to give me this opportunity to share a few thoughts with all of you over here. It is a privilege to be able to inaugurate a program that commemorates the centenary of the non-cooperation movement, because in our freedom movement, the non-cooperation movement was a very important event that happened, because till that time, after the uprising of the 1857, Indians had resigned themselves to the fact that the British were meant to rule us, and we could not fight them, we could not oppose them, and so they were resigned to become slaves of the colonial British rule. And it was only later, the beginning was made in Champaran in Bihar, when Bapu took up the cause of the indigo farmers in the Champaran district of Bihar and forced the British colonial administration to enforce reforms for the welfare of the farmers over there, and to scrap the evil system of Tin Katia that was operational over there. Till then, Indians did not believe that the British could be defeated. But Bapu showed the way in Champaran, and then when the peasants, the farmers in Kheda district were also being persecuted by the colonial administration on the issue of collecting unjust taxes, Sardar Patel and Bapu led their fight for justice. And so these two movements were the prelude to the non-cooperation movement, which was later actually triggered by the Rowlatt Act that disenfranchised Indians of that time. And that is where every movement requires a kind of a catalyst for it to begin and acquire strength. And the backdrop of large-scale discontent against the British amongst the poor and the farmers, along with the imposition of the Rowlatt Act, were the ingredients that was required to ignite the dissatisfaction amongst the Indian people. And that makes it very important that how we can use that productively. Since we have quite a few young people in the audience today, I'd like to start with addressing them, and something that will be of interest to them and also be educative to them. Right from our childhood, we are told that anger is bad. And we are told that we must not be angry because we do bad things in anger, and that is not good. Especially when you are people talk to you about nonviolence and peace, they will always tell you, don't be angry. Anger is very bad. But I want to tell you a story of what happened to my father. My father, Arun, was born and brought up in South Africa. My grandparents had been sent back to South Africa by Bapu to manage and run the Phoenix ashram over there, which had been established by Bapu, and to publish the Indian opinion, which was started by Bapu. And so my grandparents lived in Phoenix, and their children were born in Phoenix in South Africa, and they grew up over there. When my father was growing up, when he was about 11 years, 12 years old, he experienced racism in South Africa. The white students in South Africa used to beat him up because he was brown. And the African students also would beat him up because he was not dark enough. So my father found that he was in the middle of both the groups, and both the groups were torturing him. So he became very angry, and he decided that he would retaliate. He would take revenge, and so he decided that he had to build up his strength, and he set up a gymnasium in his home and started uh, doing weight training to increase his muscles, and started learning boxing so that he could defend himself. So my grandparents were very worried because they thought that Arun has got a lot of anger in him, and maybe that anger he will do something bad. And so they wrote to Bapu and told him that they were going to send Arun to India to live with Bapu on his ashram. And Bapu should help him to come to terms with his anger and learn to control his anger. And so my father was sent to India, and he started living with Bapu at Sevagram Ashram in Bardha. At that time, Bapu was living over there. And so Bapu started teaching him. And one evening, it was the rainy season, and one evening there was a storm in Bardha. So Bapu took my father outside the hut in which he was staying, and he asked my father to describe the scene as he saw it. So there was a lot of thunder and lightning in the sky. So my father described all that. And just then, a bolt of lightning fell on a tree near the ashram. And in a matter of seconds, the tree was completely burnt and reduced to charcoal. So my father described the whole thing. Then Bapu asked him, he said, Arun, what is this thunder and lightning? So my father said, it is an electric storm. It is electricity that is happening between the two clouds. And that is where we see the flash and we hear the thunder. And electricity had fallen on the tree and destroyed it. Then Bapu asked my father to go into the hut, and he said, in my cupboard you will find a torch. Go and bring it out. So my father brought that torch out. And Bapu asked him, he said, switch it on. So my father switched it on, and there was light coming out of the torch. So Bapu asked my father, he said, Arun, tell me what happened. So my father explained that there was battery cells in the torch, which when he switched it on, produced electricity which lit the bulb of light. And there we got light from it. So Bapu said, tell me how that happened. So my father said that in the dry cells, they have electricity. and when you switch it on, that electricity is used to power the bulb when it produces light. So then Bapu asked my father, he said, so there are two electricities. One is the electricity that we see in the sky, in the lightning, and the other is the electricity that we see in the torch. And he said, anger is like electricity. And it is not bad. Anger itself is not bad. But how we use that anger makes it good or bad. And so he said that, see, when electricity happens in the sky, it is wasted because there's thunder and lightning and then it is gone. And when it falls on the ground, it destroys the object on which it falls. But it also destroys itself, because when the lightning falls on the ground, you never see it go back into the sky. It gets finished. It destroys the object it falls on, and it itself is destroyed. And so he said, when you use anger in an instant reaction to beat somebody or to destroy something, then it is like the lightning in the sky. It is useless and it becomes bad because it destroys. But if you use the same anger like electricity is used in the battery, then it will give you the strength to make a difference in the situation that makes you angry. And then you will have the energy and the strength to change that situation, and then anger will become good. So this was a lesson that my father learned. And why I told you this story just now is that this was the same lesson that was put in practice for the non-cooperation movement. There was a lot of anger in the Indian society against the bad governance of the colonial British power. And they wanted to do something about it, but the people were confused. They did not know what to do, how to react. But Bapu realized that that anger could become the strength of the people. And so he channeled the anger. And the object was the Rowlatt Act. And he said that we will oppose the Rowlatt Act. We will oppose the bad governance of the colonial authorities. And we will not allow them to function. But we will not destroy anything. We will not hurt anybody. We will not hit anybody. But we will fight for our rights, and we will force them to give us the rights. And that is how the non-cooperation movement was born. And the people of India, who had believed that the British were very powerful and mighty, and we were very weak at that time, realized that this was the way in which they could oppose the British and let them know that we will not tolerate injustice. We will not allow them to deal with us in an unjust manner. We will demand justice from them. We will demand good governance from them. And so they decided to oppose, and the non-cooperation movement was born. But was the non-cooperation movement only of the leaders? But because if it was only of the leaders, it would not have succeeded. But because every Indian at that time realized that they had a responsibility for that non-cooperation movement, they participated in it. And the movement spread to all the corners of India. Small villages also, people were protesting against the British for their rights, for what they believed was justice for them. To let the British know that they will not, their brutality will not be tolerated. And it spread so far and wide that even a small town like Chauri Chaura in UP became a center of the protests. And it felt, for some time, it felt that the British themselves were shocked. they didn't expect this kind of a mass movement against them. The whole movement took them by surprise. They thought that, what is Gandhi going to be able to do? He will declare something, and for a few days, everybody will follow him, and then people will lose patience with him. But when the movement spread to the whole country, and everybody, from the poorest of the poor to the mightiest of the mighty, joined in that movement and participated in that movement, the British were shocked. They didn't know what to do. And they were saved because an act of indiscipline happened in Chauri Chaura. And that was also provoked by the brutality of the British. The police in Chauri Chaura brutally tried to suppress and treated a group of non-violent satyagrahis and beat them up. And when the villagers saw this, they became very angry. The satyagrahis themselves and the villagers became very angry, and they could not control their anger. So they attacked the police station. And then once they became victims of their own anger, they did not realize when what they were doing was becoming evil. And so they murdered the policeman and burnt the police station. And Bapu realized that his people were not ready for the kind of satyagraha that he wanted them to adopt. And so just when everybody thought that the British would capitulate and admit defeat, Bapu declared that the whole movement had to stop. In today's time, you will see, you must all have seen, that we have leaders who can start agitations. And for some time, they seem as if the agitation is becoming big. But then when it grows, the leaders themselves lose control of that agitation. And then that agitation destroys and becomes destructive. And in doing so, destroys itself also. And that is the defeat of many of the movements today, because the leaders themselves they cannot control their movements. But Bapu had the ability to control his movements. He never allowed the movements that he started to go out of control. Can you please put your mic off? It is distracting me and I'm losing track of the talk. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I have to say that, but it becomes very disturbing. So please put your mics off, everybody. And so Bapu went on a fast and he said, I will fast until the movement is stopped. Now you will wonder, you will say, Chauri Chaura was a small village and only 5 or 8 policemen were killed in this whole big country. When the whole big country was in the throes of revolution, what difference does it make if 5 or 10 people are killed? We should ignore that and continue. But Bapu was ethical. Bapu believed in his principles and he realized that if he was to make compromises with his principles, then no matter if he was victorious, that victory would be corrupted. And one day it will become bad because its origins were bad, because the way it was achieved was bad. Many a times in our lives, because we want to achieve an objective, we decide, let us take a shortcut. Let us cheat a little bit. It doesn't matter. What matters is the result at the end of it. We don't realize that that is the beginning of our downfall. Because when we make the first mistake and convince ourselves that it is okay, we can do that mistake because we wanted to achieve something. Then as the time goes by, we keep making more and more and bigger mistakes. till one fine day we realize that our whole life is a mistake, has become a mistake, has become a bad thing. And then it is too late to come back to becoming good because we abandoned good for so long. But that is what Bapu, that was the magic of Bapu. And in many people, even today, say that because of Bapu's adamancy, we another 20 years or more. Because they believed that the non-cooperation movement would have got us freedom within a year or so after it was launched. And that is what makes the non-cooperation movement very important for all of us to understand. It was after the non-cooperation movement, after Bapu stopped the non-cooperation movement, that the British accused him of sedition, and there was the sedition trial. And Bapu admitted that yes, he had committed sedition against the authorities, and he believed that it was his duty to be seditious to a ruler who was unjust and dealt with his people in an unjust manner. And Bapu has given a message. He said that in a democracy, it is if the citizens believe that the policies and actions of the government or their elected representatives are not for the benefit of the people and are unjust or discriminatory towards the people, then it becomes the duty of the citizens to become seditious, to oppose the government and make it improve its wrong policies and wrong actions. But he said that when you do that, you must also be brave enough to accept the consequences of your action. The government will punish you, and you must accept that punishment. When he was tried for sedition, he did not defend himself in court. He actually went to the court and said to the judge, he said, I don't want to waste your time. You don't have to prove the charges against me. I admit that I am seditious and I have preached revolution against the government. So punish me. Give me the punishment. I will accept it without raising any objections. That is the kind of bravery that one must have in when one becomes a non-cooperation activist or a resistor, a passive resistor, as Bapu said. This centenary becomes very important for us in India today because we are seeing massive civil discontent against government, whether they are state governments or central government. But there is a sense of dissatisfaction amongst citizens of our country. And this is exactly the same as it was 100 years ago. I talked about Champaran and Kheda, where the agrarian crisis, dissatisfaction was there, where the farmers were dissatisfied by how the government was behaving with them. Today, all over India, we see a very big anger in the farming community against the policies of the government. And we see in the youth, there is a sense of hopelessness because of the unemployment situation and the abysmal quality of education that they have. There is discontent amongst the labor forces because the government has very successfully diluted many of the laws that so far protected the labor segment of our population against exploitation by their employers and dishonest practices of big corporates and industries. But the government very, very cunningly has diluted many of those labor welfare laws to suit industrialists. And And so there is discontent amongst the laborers. At that time too, there was discontent because the traditional craftsmen were out of work. They were unemployed. They were poor because they had no revenue from their produce. And that is where Bapu, along with the non-cooperation movement, also started the Swadeshi movement and asked that people adopt the lifestyle of local consumption. Today, a lot of people tell us that we have to lessen our needs and consume locally because only that is sustainable. Look at COVID. We're all talking about COVID and we feel very threatened by COVID. But COVID has spread and become a pandemic. Yes, there is a virus for which we don't have a cure as yet. We are baffled by that virus. But there have been these kind of epidemics in the past also. They have not spread as quickly and as rapidly globally as COVID has. In the previous, in the early 1900s, Spanish flu became a big pandemic and took toll of a huge number of humanity. But it took 3 years to become a pandemic, to spread across the world. And look at COVID. COVID actually just took a few weeks to become a pandemic. And then ask yourself, why did it happen? It happened because of the lifestyle that we have become addicted to, because of the consumerist lifestyle that we have adopted, because we want so many things. And because we want so many things, we want them cheap. And so Chinese trade and Chinese commerce became very important for our own lifestyles. You look at our markets, they're flooded by Chinese products. Right from our religious idols to the toys that our babies play with, to our sports equipment, our telephone equipments, our communication equipments, to our domestic appliances, everything has a Chinese presence. And we were not willing to give it up. So when COVID happened and when it broke out in China, we told ourselves, it's okay, China will manage it. It will remain confined to the few cities and territories in China. It won't come out. We want their product. Let their products come. And for COVID, the virus, it didn't need human contact only. As long as there was communication, as long as there was products coming out from there and going to the whole of the world, the virus would definitely go with it. You will remember that a few years back, a decade back, there was an outbreak of Ebola virus in, please mute yourself. I can hear myself on your speaker. Ebola virus in East Africa. And you know, it was a life-threatening virus. It was much more dangerous than the COVID virus is. But the world stood up and confined that virus to one region in East Africa and did not allow it to travel because we did not need the goods from those countries. We were not dependent on them. And so we were able to control the virus there itself. But when COVID happened, we wanted the Chinese goods to keep coming to us. We didn't want to lose that out. And along with those goods, the virus also came into our countries and in our midst, and and infected all of us. And so remember that Swadeshi was also a way of making us understand that that was the only sustainable and ethical lifestyle. So non-cooperation movement was not only a protest. What is important to understand is that non-cooperation movement was not only a protest, but it was also preparing a better society post the non-cooperation movement. That was always the hallmark of Bapu. Whenever he launched a movement to protest against the British, parallelly he also had the movement of creating the new order, creating the new society, creating a better nation. And so both of them ran parallelly to each other. And that is where the Satyagraha movement eventually succeeded, because those who could not join as agitators, those who could not join the protest, were able to join the creative work of Gandhi, the nation building work of Gandhi. But today, what has happened to all of us? When we protest, we only want to protest. Then we don't want to perform our duties as civilians of that nation, as citizens of that nation. But when we are protesting, do we become enemies of the nation? But today that has become very easy. Look at how easily the government discredits anybody who opposes them or criticizes them. They will call them anti-national. They will call them traitors. They will call them unpatriotic. Actually, when I protest for something, I'm doing it because I love my country and I cannot tolerate what is happening to that country. But then my actions should also show that. I should be performing my duties to my country while I protest the government's wrong policies. Only then I get the moral authority to protest. And that is what happened to the Satyagraha. That the British could not blame us. They could not call the Satyagrahis traitors. They could not call the Satyagrahis as anti-nationals. But today, you make one statement and everybody starts calling you anti-national and they'll say, go away to Pakistan if you don't like it over here. Why should I go to Pakistan? India is my country and it is my duty to make it better than what it is in today. We must understand this. And we must work towards creating that kind of a society. It doesn't make any difference if we celebrate the centenary of the non-cooperation movement or we forget it. It has been forgotten. The non-cooperation resolution was passed on 17 September in the Calcutta Congress convention. Even the Congress has forgotten it. They have not even issued one statement about commemorating the non-cooperation movement. While today there is a need in India for a new non-cooperation movement to be fought, everybody has forgotten it. But the biggest commemoration of that non-cooperation movement happened late last year and in the first month of this year, when the agitation against CAA and NRC and that took place in all over the country. And it was the best model of civil disobedience and passive resistance. The Shaheen Bagh movement and similar movements all over the country that forced the government into a kind of a situation where they were intimidated. They were saved only because of this pandemic. And because the people who were protesting were more responsible than the government is, that they realized that in this time we must not continue with the public agitation, and they went back home. That was the greatest example of commemorating the non-cooperation movement. I feel that it is good that the government and the official political parties are not celebrating the centenary of non-cooperation movement. If at all the non-cooperation movement centenary is to be celebrated, it must be celebrated in the form of a people's movement to better the situation in our country, to fight, to oppose the wrong policies of the government. And as it was at that time, where the farmers were dissatisfied, the craftspeople were dissatisfied, the people were dissatisfied. The same situation is there today, present in our society, in our whole country. And so there is the same kind of fuel that is required to energize a people's movement. What we lack is a leader like Gandhi, who can guide us to be ethical, be moral in our protest also, be disciplined in our protest. Protest is a must, but we must be disciplined while protesting. So that is what is required. That is what we must all strive for. And that is how we must commemorate these historically important movements. Thank you very much, because I see a lot of young faces in the audiences and and I also see that they are listening to me with great interest. It gives me hope that India has a bright future. These young people, as they grow up to become responsible citizens of this nation. And Bapu believed that if we wanted to make a difference, and a difference for better tomorrow, then we must start with the children. We must make the children responsible for their tomorrow. Many a times our teachers and our elders tell us that be patient, your time will come, you're too young at the moment. But we must remember one thing, that there is never a future if we don't take responsibility for the present. Because only if we become responsible for our present, then we have the right to expect a future. If we keep telling us, no, I'm a child just now, I'm a young person just now, in the future I will do something, that future will never come, because you will get trapped. But if you say, no, I want, in 10 years, I want this situation to happen and I'm going to work for it right from today, then you will become responsible for your future and ensure that that future happens the way you want it to happen. When it becomes your present, it will be something that you wanted. And you will have the satisfaction of knowing that it was your achievements that made it possible. So this is the message that these kind of anniversaries and centenaries should have for all of us. Before I end, I think we're running out of time now. Before I end, because I see a lot of young faces and young children in front of me, I want to tell them a story. And I hope it also means as much to you. You're all going to school. Nowadays, of course, there is e-school, so you sit at home and study, right? In e-classroom. But when you were going to school, you must have had a lot of friends. And so some days you must have felt that my friend is rude to me and he or she did not behave properly to me, and I felt insulted by that. Yeah, we all feel that, don't we? And so this is a story that I'd like to tell you before I end my talk with all of you. And this happened sometime in 1944 or 45. At that time, Bapu was living in Pune at the Nature Cure Clinic. And he was treating Sardar Patel because Sardar Patel's health was very bad. So he had called Sardar Patel. No, it was in 1946, in the early part of 1946. So he called Sardar Patel to come and live with him in Pune in the Nature Cure Clinic so that he would nurse his health. And my grandmother and my father had come from South Africa, so they were also with Bapu over there. But Bapu had left very strict instructions that he was not to be disturbed when he was caring for Sardar Patel. And so in the morning when Bapu used to treat Sardar Patel, he was not to be disturbed. And one day a young man came to the clinic and he was carrying a big basket. And he came and he said he wanted to meet Bapu. But my grandmother told him that Bapu cannot be disturbed just now. He's very busy. So either you'll have to wait or you'll have to come back later. So after some time, the young man left the basket, which was very nicely decorated like a present. And he said, I want to give this present to Gandhi, but you have to promise me that only he will open it and nobody else will open it. So my grandmother said, sure, if you brought the present for Bapu, we will make sure that only Bapu opens it. So when Bapu was free and he was resting, my father took the basket to Bapu and he said, Bapu, some unknown friend has brought you a very big gift and it looks very exciting. So can we open it so we can all see your gift? And Bapu said, yes, let's open it. And he asked my father to open the basket. When the basket was opened, they discovered that it was full of old and torn footwear, shoes and champals. Now just imagine on your birthday, if your friend gives you a present of his or her old shoes or chappals, that would be the end of the friendship, right? You will be very angry and you will say, I don't want you as my friend anymore. And everybody thought that it was a big insult and they thought Bapu would get angry. But Bapu looked at the gift and he said, what a precious gift I have got. And everybody was surprised. My father asked him, he said, Bapu, these are old torn shoes and champals. How are they precious? So he told my father, he said, Arun, take these champals to the scrap dealer and sell them and bring the money back to me. So my father and his cousin, they took the champals to the scrap dealer and they sold them. And at that time, they got 4 or 4.5 rupees for all of them. So they brought the money back to Bapu and said, Bapu, this is the money we got from selling these the present you had got. So Bapu said, okay, go and deposit that money in the Harijan Welfare Fund. It will benefit the fund. So the money was deposited in the fund. And then that evening, in his prayer meeting, when the public used to come to attend the prayer meeting, Bapu announced that an unknown friend gave me a very precious present today. And he said that I sold the present and I got the money and I deposited in the fund. But he said, I want to thank that unknown friend, but I don't know who it was. So if he is present in the meeting, please accept my gratitude. And if somebody who knows that friend can convey my message to him, I'll be obliged. That young man was present in the meeting because he had thought that Gandhi will be angry and he will say something in anger. And then I will tell him that he is not non-violent. But when he saw Gandhi's response, he himself got very angry. And he stood up and he started shouting. He said, how did you sell? How dare you sell my present? It was not your property. And he said, now you give that money back to me. You can't take the money. So Bapu said, my friend, you gave me the present. When I accepted it, it was mine. Then I could do what I like with it. And I've sold it. And now I've put the money, deposited the money in the Harijan fund. So I can't give it to you also. So I can only say thank you to you. But the young man became very angry and he started abusing, and people thought that he might become violent. So they took him away from the meeting. And then everybody forgot about it. And then my grandmother and my father went back to South Africa. But in 1948, when Bapu was murdered and the news of Bapu's murder was published in the papers in South Africa, they published the photograph of the murderer also in the paper. And when my grandmother saw that photograph, she said, oh my God, it is the same young man who came and gave that basket of shoes and champals to Bapu in Pune. Now you see what anger did to Nathuram Godse. He was angry for a long time with Bapu. And because he allowed that anger to make him violent, he ended up murdering Bapu. But because Bapu refused to accept the insult that Nathuram wanted to make to him, he turned that whole incident into a positive thing. And it became good for him. And he forgot that there was an insult. This is how we must also learn to live. Then we truly become non-violent. And for young people, this is very important to understand. Because you live in the age of communications where everything is communication. When we were young, we could only communicate with our friends when they were with us. The rest of the time, we were not communicating with them. But now, you communicate with your friends and everybody by your smartphones, through social media. And even people you never met become your friends because they are your Facebook friends and your WhatsApp friends and your social media friends. And so every instant in your life you are communicating. And there is a possibility that somebody will do something or say something or write something that offends you. And then you will become angry and want to take revenge on that. And that will start the chain of violence in society. And that is the danger that we must all be aware of. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you to the organizers of this beautiful event. Thank you for honoring me with this opportunity to speak to all of you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
now, if the organizers will allow, and if anybody has some questions, you can ask me questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Gandhi,
Yes, sir. Thank you. Such a
Everybody enjoyed, sir. Wonderful
very
speech.
wonderful,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
wonderful, very precious, very thrilling. I have more information from you, and our invitation is pending. I will come and again I will invite you to Kerala.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be in touch afterwards.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. It was a wonderful moment. Inspirable, informative. My dear friends, you can interact with such a great personality. Before that, we have some felicitations. Professor Minnie Matthew. Professor Minnie Matthew.
Dr. Minnie Matthew?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
Okay.
You can interact, madam.
Respected President of the meeting, PC Kabir Master, Chief Guest of the Day, respected Tushar Gandhi ji, all dignitaries, members of the Gandhi Darshan Educational and Cultural Committee, and SAHITHY International distinguished personalities, and dear friends. A pleasant good evening to one and all present here. I am feeling happy and honored to be a part of the inauguration of the centenary celebrations of the non-cooperation movement and for sharing the dais with such great personalities. While thinking of the father of the nation, I do remember the words of the great scientist Albert Einstein. Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth. Now today, we are fortunate enough to hear from his great grandson on non-cooperation movement, which Gandhiji used as a weapon to fight against the British rule and to secure freedom for our country. Now, we had a great, beautiful speech too, a good message for the youngsters too. I take this opportunity to congratulate the organizers and to bring such a big program at this moment of great crisis of COVID-19 and to think of a great heritage and a father of the nation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, madam. Kampara Narayanan, sir. Kampara Narayanan, sir. Mr. Hari Govindan, the leader of School Teachers Kerala. Mr. Hari Govindan, sir. Can you hear me? Hari Govindan, sir. Illa. Okay. KK Pallashana. KK Pallashana.
നസീർ മാസ്റ്റർ അദ്ദേഹത്തെ ഒരു താങ്ക്സ് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് വിട്ടോളൂ.
Yes, sir.
അദ്ദേഹത്തെ വിട്ടോളൂ.
അല്ല, അദ്ദേഹത്തോട് interaction-
എന്നാ അത്
interaction
എന്നാ അത്
ഉണ്ട്.
തുടങ്ങും. അല്ല അതുവരെ അങ്ങനെ ഇരിക്കാൻ കഴിയില്ല.
Okay, okay, sure. We can നമ്മുടെ ശ്രോതാക്കൾക്ക് നമ്മുടെ ഗസ്റ്റുമായി ഇന്ററാക്ട് ചെയ്യാനുള്ള അവസരമാണ്. കുമാരി ഗൗരി നന്ദന.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I'm Gauri Nanda Kesha.
Hi, Gauri.
Sir, my question is, Gandhiji used the term Hey Ram as an ideological policy. Nowadays, people are using it as a term of political Hinduism. How do you feel it, sir?
The Rama of Gandhi was a very different Rama from the political Ram that has been adopted in India today. There is no comparison. You must remember that we all grew up, at least in my generation, I grew up worshipping Ram, whom we used to call as the Maryada Purushottam Ram, the humble Ram, the loving Ram, and the all-embracing Ram, who was wedded to the ideal of duties and who willingly, for the sake of upholding his father's promise, gave up his kingdom. And so he was a sacrificing Ram. And today they are trying to force a vengeful Ram on us, who wants to take revenge for everything. So there is a big difference between Hey Ram and Jai Shri Ram. And we must understand that the Ram in Hey Ram is very different from the Ram in Jai Shri Ram. There is no comparison between them. And you rightfully said that Jai Shri Ram is the politicized Ram. And Hey Ram is the Hey Ram of the devotee.
Very good. Very good.
Sir,
Yes.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Can you please explain whether the ideology and social philosophy of Gandhiji influenced you to build up your personality and character?
I was not fortunate enough to be born when Bapu was alive, so I did not get to learn from him. But my good fortune was that my grandmother and my father spent a lot of time in Bapu's ashrams. And so when I was growing up as a young child, I was told a lot of stories of their experiences with Bapu and in the ashram. And as I grew up, I realized, because as my intellect developed and I was able to understand the meaning behind those stories, I was able to understand the importance of those stories. So the story about anger, the story about insult, and there's so many other stories also. They have helped me to understand what are the important things in life. And so, yes, it has helped me to develop my character and develop my ideology and my belief system also.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
നമുക്ക് 2 ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ കൂടിയുള്ള സമയമുണ്ട്. സർ, 2 ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ കൂടി.
Gatha Girish, you can ask a question.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I am Gatha Girish. I am an 8th standard student in St. Mary's Patam. Sir, I have a question. Sir, how would you feel when you are called the great grandson of Gandhiji?
Gada, I was told when I was a very young child, I was told that I did not need to be proud of being the great grandson of Gandhi, because that had only happened because I was born in a particular family. There was nothing to make me proud about it. So I came to understand that very early in my life. But I feel very proud of the fact that I am from that family. But there is also the knowledge that it is only because of Bapu that I have that recognition, and I have to earn the respect that all of you or many of you give to me. I cannot expect that to be given to me just because I'm a descendant of Bapu. If you think of it, he was introduced. Everybody said he's the father of the nation. Well, if you think of him as a father of the nation, you also become his grandson, great grandson, great granddaughter, or whatever. You also become part of his human family. So I become just like you all, nothing special. And I understand that. And so I have been able to live with that much more easily. But yes, it gives me great pride to be known as the great grandson of both my great grandparents, Ba and Babu.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
അശ്വിനി എ ദേവ് നമ്മോടൊപ്പം ചേരുന്നു. അശ്വിനി സാറിനോട് സംസാരിക്കാം. യു ക്യാൻ ഇന്ററാക്ട്. അശ്വിനി എ ദേവ്.
Good evening, sir. I am Ashwini Edev. I am an 8th standard student in St. Mary's HSS Patam. And I have one question. In present India, is it possible to follow the principles of Mahatma?
The principles of Mahatma, Ashwini, are not something that he invented himself or something new that he had discovered. They are the basic foundations of society and civilization. And so they will never be timeless. So they will never go out of being relevant. But we have to have the courage and discipline to be able to adopt them and practice them in our lives. So we have to ask ourselves the questions: Are we capable enough to be able to inherit the legacy of Gandhi? And then it will become much easier for us, because his ideology is timeless. His ideology was practiced before him also, and his ideology will be practiced after him also. And that is the uniqueness of his methods and his ideology.
Didi JV.
Sir, I am Didi JV.
Hello.
I am studying St. Mary's HSS Patam. Sir, what qualities have you inherited from Mahatma Gandhi?
I have to still I have to learn a lot from Bapu. But if you were to ask me what was the most important quality of Bapu that I try to practice in my life, it is his perseverance. Once he decided to achieve something, he never gave up. No matter how many failures, no matter how many obstacles in his path, no matter how many hardship he had to undergo, he always achieved what he had decided to achieve. And that quality has helped me in my life also. So if there was to say which one quality I have adopted and I practice in my life, it is the quality of perseverance, of never giving up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
വളരെ മനോഹരമായ ഒരു സന്ധ്യ വിടവാങ്ങുന്നു. സച്ച് എ ഗ്രേറ്റ് പേഴ്സണാലിറ്റി. നമ്മുടെയൊക്കെ മനം കുളിർക്കുന്ന ഒരു അനുഭവമായി തുഷാർ ഗാന്ധി പെയ്തിറങ്ങുകയായിരുന്നു. മഹാത്മാവിന്റെ സവിധത്തിൽ എത്തിപ്പെട്ട പോലെ ഇൻസ്പയർ ചെയ്യുന്ന ആ ഗാന്ധിജിയുടെ നമ്മൾ ആരും കേൾക്കാത്ത അൺനോൺ പേഴ്സൺ കൊടുത്ത ആ ഗിഫ്റ്റിന്റെ കഥ റിയലി ഇൻസ്പയറിംഗ് സർ. ഈ പരിപാടിക്ക് നന്ദി അർപ്പിക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി സാഹിതിയുടെ സെക്രട്ടറി ജനറൽ പിന്നി സാഹിതി സാറിനോട് അഭ്യർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു.
ഒരു ചെറിയ ആശംസ കൂടിയുണ്ട്. ഗാന്ധി ദർശൻ സെക്രട്ടറി ശ്രീ പരശുവെക്കൽ രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ, പ്ലീസ്.
പരശുവെക്കൽ രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ സർ, ഗാന്ധി ദർശൻ സമിതിയുടെ ജനറൽ സെക്രട്ടറി കൂടിയായ പരശുവെക്കൽ രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ സർ, വെൽക്കം സർ.
സമയമായി ബഹുമാനപ്പെട്ട
ഇതോടുകൂടി നമുക്ക് കൺക്ലൂഡ് ചെയ്യാം.
ബഹുമാനപ്പെട്ട കബീർ മാസ്റ്റർ, ബെന്നി സാഹിതി, ഹെൻറി വിക്ടർ, നസീർ സാർ, സുകുമാരൻ സാർ, നമ്മുടെ കുട്ടികൾ വളരെ അദ്ദേഹം നല്ല രീതിയിൽ തന്നെ മഹാത്മാഗാന്ധിയുടെ കുറിച്ച് കൂടുതൽ നമുക്ക് അറിയുന്ന രീതിയിൽ അദ്ദേഹം കുട്ടികൾക്ക് ഒരുപാട് അറിവ് പകരുന്ന രീതിയിൽ അദ്ദേഹം പറയുകയുണ്ടായി. അത് തിരിച്ച് കുട്ടികൾ നല്ല ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കുകയും അതിന് അദ്ദേഹം ഉത്തരങ്ങൾ പറയുകയും ചെയ്തു. അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് ഗാന്ധി ദർശന സമിതി സംസ്ഥാന കമ്മിറ്റിയുടെ എല്ലാവിധ ഭാവങ്ങളും നേർന്നുകൊള്ളുന്നു. അദ്ദേഹത്തെ നമ്മൾ കേരളത്തിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ വേണ്ടി ശ്രമിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഈ കൊറോണയുടെ ഈ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ ചെയ്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അദ്ദേഹത്തെ കേരളത്തിൽ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് അദ്ദേഹത്തെ നമ്മൾ ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാമിന് പങ്കെടുപ്പിക്കണമെന്ന് ബഹുമാനപ്പെട്ട നമ്മുടെ കബീർ മാസ്റ്റർ സംസാരിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. അത് പ്രകാരം ഒരു 2-3 മാസത്തെ ഒരു ടൈമിന്റെ ഇത് നോക്കിയിട്ട് അദ്ദേഹത്തെ കേരളത്തിൽ കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ വേണ്ടി ഞങ്ങൾ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നതാണ്. വെൽക്കം ശ്രീ വിഷാർജി കേരള. ഓക്കെ, താങ്ക് യു.
Thank you, Parishokal sir. Tushar Gandhiji sir, one more last question. Sir, non-cooperation and disobedience movement is possible in the present scenario. That is our last question. Question from Jasmine Stephen. Please unmute, sir. Your microphone is muted. Please unmute, sir. Yeah.
Yes, it is always possible because those are the two ideal methods of protest, of protest by citizens and people, and so they are always going to be relevant and possible. The success of those methods will depend on how honest and ethical we are in their practice, because non-violent civil disobedience requires a lot of courage, a lot of self-discipline and honesty on part of the practitioners, and it also has to be a selfless motive. It cannot be an agitation where you protest till you benefit out of it by some way or the other, and then you say, okay, now I got my benefit, now I don't care about anybody else. It has to be selfless. So if those 4 qualities are practiced, then it can be successful in any given time, any given situation, and any given place.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
ഭരണകൂടം മർദ്ദകോപകരണമായി മാറുമ്പോൾ നീതിയുടെ പക്ഷത്ത് നിലയുറപ്പിച്ച ബാപ്പുവിന്റെ സ്മരണകൾ മനോഹരമായി അയവിറക്കിയ തുഷാർ ഗാന്ധിജി സാറിന് നന്ദി അർപ്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് സാഹിതി സെക്രട്ടറി ജനറൽ പിന്നി സാഹിതി സർ. പിന്നി സാഹിതി സർ.
അവിടെ പോയി
മാഷവിടെ പോയി. മാഷാണല്ലോ നമുക്കൊപ്പം.
ബെന്നി ഇല്ലേ?
ബെന്നി മാഷവിടെ? ബെന്നി മാഷ്
maybe network problem, bad climate. Yeah,
കഷ്ടായി പോയി.
Sir, Vijay sir left the meeting.
maybe he will back.
നസീർ എന്നാൽ പറയൂ, ഓട്ടോ താങ്ക്സ് പറയൂ. നീ ഇങ്ങനെ നിർത്തരുത്.
അവസാനിപ്പിക്കും, പറഞ്ഞ് അവസാനിപ്പിച്ചോളൂ.
Okay, sir.
താങ്ക് യു.
നസീർ.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Proceed.
I extend my sincere gratitude to such a wonderful personality,
Prominent personality.
Honorable Tushar Gandhi. He revealed us in a simple language, in the language of love, passion, compassion. He transformed such an energy to fight with the injustice of present situation in our country. Hopefully, we are waiting the leadership of such a personalities, sir, like you, brave as to fight with the injustice. Thank you once again. Coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So
Good
I'll
night
take
and welcome to the-
and leave.
Okay,
Thank
sir,
you
you
very
can
much.
leave.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch with you, sir. I'll be in touch
Sure.
with you.
Please do. Please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, sir.
Thank you,
Good night,
sir.
Best wishes to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful percentage. Wonderful percentage. Wonderful percentage.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for all the participants.
Thank you so much, sir.
Active.
Thank you, sir.
That girls asked a wonderful question. Very active there. Nasir? Hello? Closed?
നസീർ സാർ മീറ്റിംഗ്
നസീർ?
കഴിഞ്ഞല്ലോ. Okay.
എവിടെ പോയി താങ്കൾ?
Sir, Nasir sir left the meeting.
Okay.
Why?
നമ്മുടെ